I've been sitting here talking to myself for 10 minutes. No lie. Sorry if you've been waiting. Because somehow when the countdown, the big build up started, and then so I've been sending messages to myself or to the group. Oh, here I am talking to myself. Alrighty. So, welcome. And I'm going to start over. A couple house cleaning items. If you're watching in the Facebook group or on the page, if you go up to the event, there's a little thing. If you want to comment and want me to know who it is, you have to click that so your name pops up. If you're on YouTube, it'll pop up whatever your YouTube name is. After I'm live, you comment all you want. I'll go back and check it in the groups and the page. So, or if you don't want to do that, just if you're going to write something, just write who's writing it. And again, sorry I'm starting late, technical difficulties, and then I sat here talking to myself for 10 minutes. So let me rewind where I was. So I just got done listening to, if you're not a James Lindsay Gnosticism, you should be. You should get there because it'll make all of this make sense. Queer theory, critical theory, social emotional learning, DEI, the history of it. That's something I can listen to him all day because I understand what he's saying. But it can be very overwhelming. But he does have, let's see, he does these shorts. They're called, I think, New Discourses Bullets. And there's one in particular that I just got done listening to called The Power of Opting Out. And because the future of the new future is going to be opting in or your life becomes very difficult. And he talks about, you have to facial scan to pay your bills, or you have to, but you don't really have to. But if you opt out of it, they're going to make your life very difficult. Okay, so that's what we're going to say. You don't have to own an electric car, but if you don't, we're going to make finding gas and your existence really difficult. And then he goes on, I'll post the link here, just so y'all have it. But it's 17 minutes, it's very easy. But he talks about Steve Bannon and an example that he has said many times about the vaccine and COVID. And so Bannon, a lot said only 1 in 7 Americans resisted getting the vaccine. And I don't remember if it was 50 million or whatever, but it was enough to where, remember vaccine passports? I was one. Hell no, not me, not my family. Come for me, find me in my bunker. Never, ever, ever, ever. And so those of us, and then they shamed us, right? They shamed us. They said, we're going to kill the world. They did everything in their power to shut us down. And we still resist it. And the founding fathers said, when there's tyranny, resistance is mandatory. And that's what we are under now with this, you can't opt out with your kids. It is sheer tyranny. It is lying. They're telling people everywhere. In Maryland, they just passed a law. I heard in Fairfax that they had teachers sign in non-disclosure agreements if parents asked about SEL. I've heard from someone running for school board in Loudoun. I've heard from Loudoun many times. But the funny thing is that if you go onto the Loudoun County Public School page, they're actually one of the most transparent when it comes to if you know how to look for it. So that's the problem. And if you're running for school board, read the code, the entire school board code, because there's a section, it's section IV, so 4. You have the power to create opt-in if you're running for school board. Now, some school boards like Isle of Wight were like, well, that's just too difficult. We're just going to keep it as opt-in or opt-out. The problem with opt-out is that you have to have absolute transparency, which is why that is even being pushed back on, which is why we're going to cover the law today. Because federal law, state law, there's law upon law upon law upon law that whether it's counseling given to your children without you knowing, whether it's surveying, because this is where Virginia got really hung up in the muck, is that a survey and an assessment used to mean something that collected data. And when we had textbooks, data was not being collected every click, every scroll, every bubble, every assignment, every homework assignment, every classroom assignment, every test, every quiz, everything. So under the law, the reason that they're pushing back is because under the definition of a survey, they have to give you 30 days with the information to opt out. So that's why they're continuing this lie that when they notify you of the suicide survey or the climate survey, those are the only surveys they're doing. Like, that's the lie. Because you're like, oh, well, they notify us of these too. Okay, no. Every assignment your child's given, especially social emotional learning, the class, the screeners, which really quick, let me show you this because I missed it in video 1 because the sound was missing. So I do want to, I feel like it's really important to give an example. Now this video, it's called The World Blessing. This was shot days, weeks before the pandemic. And it is 154 nations in 257 languages. It's 8 minutes long. I'm not going, you can look it up on YouTube. And, but you want to talk about what they're destroying? This beauty right here by telling us that this beautiful world where color doesn't matter doesn't exist. And that's why I feel like it's important to show this.
His face shine upon you. Be gracious to you. The Lord turn His face toward you and give you peace. You'll stay alive.
Okay, so just like episode 1, it takes, like, if you don't, sorry, yes, I have a soul, yes, I have a big heart. So the reason it's important to show that is because this ugly world they're teaching our children doesn't exist. This beautiful world where color doesn't matter, the color of your skin, it doesn't exist. So that's why I feel it's important to understand that. Because if you believe what they're telling you, that you're systemically racist, that you have implicit bias, and the fact that you don't recognize it, and back from the first episode, we talked about what social awareness, self-awareness, all that actually means is biases. It's teaching collectivism. So all of these individual nations, because they're all getting the same social emotional learning, coming from UNESCO and the World Economic Forum, is there's not only seeking to destroy a nation, they're seeking to unite the globe. And so that's why I feel like it's important to show that. But so James Lindsay, he talks about, we resisted the pandemic by opting out, by saying no. And if we had not done that, we did it in a small enough portion that we are not under vaccine passports right now. And the whole house of cards crumbled. Okay? And the same thing goes, and he goes into, and I shared the link, the same thing goes for opting your children out. And if it's not, if it's not for your child, for the nation, do it, because it throws a cog. You know, when we hosted the Marxification in Education last year, James and I talked extensively about the data. Taking the data out of the piece, which is law behind that too, but removing them from SEL is not only removing them from the brainwashing of it, because it's straight socialism, it's straight brainwashing. You're not important, the collective is, okay? Is what they're teaching your child. In explicit lessons, and I'll show you that in a second. But it's caping the data that's going to track your child forever. And tomorrow night at 8, Deb Philman on The Reason We Learn, we're going to do a show that's going to blow your mind about how all of our children have been pathologized, which means they all have mental illness. Like, and I'm not even kidding you. So that's all I'm going to say about that, because if I go down that rabbit hole, I won't stop talking. So the law. But first, I didn't get a chance the other day to show you guys what systemic looks like. So this is from Panorama, so it's 18 supporting every student, 18 research methods in interventions for your MTSS. Last one we covered what the MTSS was, the umbrella. We call it the VTSS, the multi-tiered system of support. So it's got your RTI, your response to intervention. It's got PBIS, restorative practices, SEL. That's all MTSS. But here, look out here. They say strategies across literacy, math, SEL, and behavior. I have other examples I did not pull up that goes into social studies, art, and all this stuff can be found, guys. Type in art, Castle, social emotional learning. Like, this stuff is out there. They're not hiding it. But here they talk about math, and we talked about this before, like the civics example from 8th grade in the last show, about you might see the assignment and it might alarm you, but you don't know the conversation that became part of it. Same thing with math. When DeSantis banned CRT books, if you Google that, they gave you 4 examples from the Florida Department of Education that you look at them and you're like, well, yeah, it's a little bit racist. It's not CRT. That's social emotional learning. And those are, and I have them somewhere, but you can look those up. They only released 4 because they sell books. But so here you can see how they've told you how to have a math journal to put SEL into it. You know, they can use their math journals to take notes, to solve problems, illustrate ideas. You know, math journaling. But they go into the question-answer relationship. So this is how, you know, provide each student with a worksheet of graphic problems, have students work individually to choose the appropriate question, answer, or whatever. Anchor charts. When my daughter was home for COVID, I would use anchor charts. But apparently that's a social emotional learning. See here, mathematics, problem solving, critical thinking. MTSS, tier 1 is everybody. Tier 2, I don't know anybody that's ever contacted me that their child has needed tier 2 or tier 3. Because you think that they were collecting data to help children with their behavior and their social and emotional skills, that somebody would have been contacted along the way that their child needed 2 or 3. So this is just to show you like mathematics, how they are in. So here you go. Problems. This is lower elementary, upper elementary, like kindergartners. Think about student experiences that can relate to the math concept and consideration. And again, this is just what they're saying. So they're saying what I've been saying. It is systemically embedded into everything. Okay. Their word salad isn't going to sound so bad. The point of showing this is to show you that then you've got literacy, wondering why our kids can't read. Story mapping, where students create a graphic organizer to visualize the element structure of a story. And we're 50th in the nation again for literacy. Why? Because we stopped grade level competency in 2009. What would we go to? College and career readiness, which is now post-secondary. They don't even care. College is just left out now. So this is just to show you that if you look, they'll tell you how. You can look up CASEL, systemic embedded, and they'll give you examples like this. Okay. Which takes me to, I'm going to close that one out. Boop, I don't know, I've urged people many times to look up the standards of learning for health. Health. Yes, it's in Word format because that's just the way. But oh, James Lane, bestie. See, he's still seated. Gecker, Holton, that's Tim Kaine's wife. And, where's the other chick? Wilson? No. Tammy Mann. So, they created this. The rest of them have gone on their way. But look, right here. And the health, this is not even the social emotional learning standards of learning. This is why you have to understand that if you opt your child out of the lesson of second step, that you can't stop there. And I'm going to show you how and why you do that. But more the how. But so this is health. So like I said the other show, if you do one thing, get a portal, Schoolology, Power School, Canvas. Do it. And if you do one thing, go into health. That's where you're going to find the majority of what's going to jump out at you. Because again, you can see the assignment, but you don't know how the conversation went down. You don't know how the class exercise, but when you see the verbiage that in the last show I explained, things should start to jump out at you as to what kind of discussion could have gone on that led to that assignment. But here, on this right here, CASEL, this is not social emotional learning. These are the health standards of learning. And so then you go down, profile of a graduate, look that up. But here, cores and competencies of health education. Right here, goals and strands. This is health, not social emotional learning, which have their own separate standards of learning. Family life has the same thing. Family life, the first notch, kindergarten on up, is mental health. And now they're going to add a new mental health curriculum. And we just elected senators across the state that voted for that. Bravo, guys, who wouldn't listen about your establishment. Bravo. Way to save our kids. So those of you that did not have firehouse primaries or whatever the other crazy thing is, I can't ever remember when you have delegates, a convention that still have the power to fight, like Matt Strickland, Lance Allen, getting the right. Okay, I work with these people. These people know all of this. They're ready to go into Richmond and fight this with the law. Because the people that have done this, one person earned her spot. Amanda Shea is the only person that earned her spot because she stood up against the bipartisan, unanimous more mental health. But you look in here, kindergarten, essential health concepts. You go through mental wellness, social emotional skills. Okay? This is kindergarten health standards. And it's only one component. Essential. Then you go down to healthy decisions. Look, mental wellness and social emotional skills. Okay? Kindergarten, still on kindergarten. Advocacy and health promotion, still on kindergarten. Mental wellness, social emotional skills. Okay? Grade 1, same thing. Mental, and it just gets worse as you go by. This is easy to find. Type in VDOE Health SOLs 2020, and it'll be right there. Same thing. It just gets worse as you get older, as you in your grade cohort, as they call it. You know, and it sounds great, doesn't it? Demonstrate ways to express feelings appropriately. That's one of those words that, as we talked about the other day, appropriate to who? You need to ask people. Ask your delegates and senators. When you voted for this, what did you think evidence-based meant? Do you know what the Secretary of Education does? Data quality campaign. Do you know what that is? Do you know how much data is collected on our children? Which will, it just happened to pop up on my screen. So this is from good old Wayback Machine. This is data quality campaign launched at Data Summit from Richmond, Virginia. And for those of you blasting me about what a wonderful person Paul Lott is, I'm not saying Paul Lott is not anything. I'm saying that having Amy Kadera speak at your kickoff party does not set a very good tone if you're going to be the person people believe you to be. So it's your chance to be humble, and don't tell me that I'm listening to rumors or that I am, you know, bashing somebody or canceling somebody. No, I'm telling you, this is your chance to be, because not only that, she's a firm CRT believer and social emotional learning. They go hand in hand. But here, this was Richmond, Virginia, 2005. A national campaign to improve the quality accessibility of data in education was launched today at the Council of Chief State School Officers, which is its own, and the U.S. Department of Education's Data Summit. Okay? Who launched it? Data Quality Campaign. Okay? One of Bill Gates' most funded groups. You can look at, he's not an LLC, it's all public. So these are the questions that you need to explain to people so here, the statewide longitudinal database system, and I've already showed that before. I'm not going to get into bashing Gadara, but is that you need to explain to people who these people are. It's not a rumor. It's not anything. It's the truth. And then, so, and just because I had it on me, so Stafford, because people send me everything. So this would be Stafford's taking care of yourself. This was, of course, a teacher. This was not made available to the public. And unfortunately, because I did not export it as a, it does have click, oh, I can. So, like student services, like this is Stafford. Like, let's see what this is. Oh, look, they have Stafford County Public Schools, social emotional support resources. Resources. So, behavior contracts. What? So just, you know, I just wanted to show you guys what that looks like. And I think if you're in the group, I put all this stuff in the group. But so Stafford uses Panorama. It's an SEL survey. For our younger students, K through 12, their teachers will share a reflection of what they've noticed. So they're being surveyed. That's how Stafford's doing it. The following trainings have been developed or offered. Okay. Trauma. Okay. So this equity and diversity, Stafford, to your teachers. This is teacher development, professional development. Okay. Oh, look, I don't want to click on these because I'm trying not to be on here for 8 hours. As the world turns, that sounds fun. I would write that down. Social emotional. During the 3-week return to work period for staff, Okay, that's like equity training. And what we talked about before, under MAL is, so what I have the binder here from Chesterfield. It's like struggle sessions, like teachers who took the equity training, if they did not do it like to the level, they did not pass, and then if they failed it again, they couldn't teach. Okay. Now that is 100%, 800 words I can think of. But if we talk about a cultural revolution, that's where you're the black guard, the red guard comes in, and they do struggle sessions, and they're going to make you conform no matter what, or guess what, you suffer. And then on the same note, so here's Virginia Beach, Ocean Lakes High School, and it goes through the same thing, the learning framework, breakout rooms, collaborative work, differentiated learning. And again, I think if you're in the group where you can post files, I've put all this stuff for you guys to be able to have access to. But I mean, so here, it's like this is interactive presentations and lectures. They've got PlayPost, Nearpod, Pear Deck, Google Slides, like I told you before, guys. Open your kid's Chromebook. They're chatting in school about things that you never thought your 10-year-old would chat about. And that's one thing you can't access through the parent portal. Digital whiteboards. So we talk about why our kids can't read and can't do math, and why nobody cares. You haven't heard anybody talk about it, have you? Because it doesn't matter to them. People associated with the World Economic Forum and Data Quality Campaign believe that you don't need to teach penmanship and you don't need to teach handwriting, because my daughter has horrific, because she's left-handed. I always wondered, why don't they care about penmanship, much less cursive? They'll tell you, because they're going to use keyboards. And this, and so this is just to show you what not education looks like. What they're doing that is using Google Apps, collaborative, bad word, collaborative notes with Google Doc, bad word, and and here's Schoolology. And teachers, they're collecting just as much data on you. Personalize your classroom. And so that's just one that I wanted to pull up from Virginia Beach that I had on me. Not on me, but stored in my millions of others stored. So, what else did I want to pull up? What was that? I have contracts too, out the yin yang, by the way, that I found from other divisions. So if you want to know, so this one I stumbled upon. So the sister company to Castle. So Gloria asks, can school boards say no to cultural competency, professional developing? Would there be funding penalties? So, this is what I've worked on with is that cultural, it is, like we've talked about, one, if I was on a school board, I would just say no and I would pull it. Because the VDOE isn't doing oversight for what? Anything. That's their job. They probably wouldn't even notice. It's all going to be around what your teachers do. Like how brainwashed your teachers are. But that's a great question. And that goes to another thing is you don't have to do any of this. You don't have to do social emotional learning. You don't have to do family life. The Virginia Constitution has, and I don't know if Heather's on here or one of the moms I work with regularly, but I did a show, it was like 30 minutes long, probably the shortest one I ever did, about standards. And I showed it in there. There's like 4 things listed in the Constitution of Virginia that schools have to teach. Math, English, social studies, skills, whatever. And so the law passed to the department, developed the standards. Read what the law says. And even Governor Youngkin and the new history standards, the standards are a guide map. It's up to the division to create the curriculum. So is that breaking down education policy is a huge headache, but that's what I'm here for. But is what I would also tell you is the one thing you can. Gloria, I'm just going to pop your question. And so I'm going to pop this up. I would say this is that I have a video of Governor Youngkin in Burke, Virginia at the Fairfax rally, where he said there will be a school resource officer on every campus, or school boards, listen to me. You better find your funding elsewhere, with that exact emphasis. And he said it like twice. I shot it live, so I have the whole thing. So to say your point is, whose funding has he pulled? Nobody. Nobody in the history of the standards of learning, even New York State, or New York City, New York State, they had a 50-50. They were the first people to push back on standards of learning. SOLs. They had 50% opt-outs. Nobody in the history of man has ever, even when schools will blackmail you and say that, well, if you're going to be a bad parent because we're going to lose our funding if we don't have a certain amount. No school ever in the history of anything has ever had funding pulled because of SOL opt-outs. So, is learning things like this, like what the Constitution, because you oath of office, is I don't have to teach this. I don't have to tell you why. I don't. Because right here in the Virginia Constitution that I took an oath of office to, is that I only have to teach these 5 things. And that's not family life. That's why we have an 86% family life. And you don't have to do SEL. And if they say, well, the law, then you say, well, the Constitution. The law is unconstitutional. And that, guys, it's like, so James Lindsay talked about like the power of opting out. It's like the same thing with COVID. Because once we started pushing back against COVID, the fact that it was unconstitutional came up. The fact that it did not do anything came up. But we've been accepting, how many parents, Chesterfield is one. We had lines out the door to unmask the kids. But their education, crickets. And I don't know, it's like I tell people, is that gun rights, like you tell them they're coming for their guns, man, you'll have conservatives, you'll have BLM, Antifa, like, you're not coming for my guns. But you tell them that, you not only tell them, but you show them that they're coming for your kids. Nothing. Like, and I don't know how and that's just where we are. Like, so, but I wanted to show you, so Castle, of course, has sister companies. But then I showed y'all in a couple shows, especially the last one, that, and there was an article that came out that I went down this rabbit hole with screeners. Is it says you can't teach skills if you don't assess them. And that's where the screeners comes in. And if you type in Castle assessments, they'll give you the list. You can type in Castle, as I showed the other one, Castle approved curriculum, or whatever. They'll give you the 85 that are being taught across the nation that all align with Castle. So you have all Castle, all 5 competencies taught this way, because you have to align to Castle. So then you have the assessments that then also have to align to Castle. And so there's a whole list of assessments, and that's where you get into DESA, Aperture, Panorama, Sabers, the really disturbing ones. Like I said, we're going to get into all the really screwed up part if you really want to know the truth tomorrow night. The Reason We Learn with Deb Philman on her channel. She and I did the 8-part series, defunded.gov, where we uncovered the SEL's evil twin, behavior screeners. So if you're getting SEL, you're also getting, because Second Step uses DESA. So it may not be built in where you're able to, but if you have Second Step, you're getting a screener with it. and there's like 8 that same thing. Panorama has like it is one huge antitrust oligarchy cabal of corruption. But so measuring SEL is the system. So if you go to Castle and look up assessments, it's going to send you here. This is like this. It's not even a sister; it's the twin company. And this, unfortunately, I have the PDF version, but I will. This here is the biggest. What is going on? Because it'll tell you. So here, like, so welcome to our new Measuring SEL website. Okay, educational testing service, social, emotional, and school climate assessment in Latin America. From key skills, and so we're going Learning Policy Institute, Devereaux, that's DESA, civic enterprises. Guys, that's a big one, because when we talk about workforce learning and who had their hands in the history standards of learning pot, we're talking about civic. What school leaders need to advance SEL. They have literal, like, narratives, like speeches, to go talk to politicians about this stuff. Okay, the American Institute of Research, that's Bill Gates. Chesterfield has a contract with them. A comprehensive scan of social and emotional competency frameworks. If there's anyone that you guys would like me to click on and share, just let me know. But I will upload, if you're in the group, I will upload this so that you guys have access to all of these nice, pretty blue links. If you don't know one of the worst OECD, I don't, at the moment, if anybody can tell me what it's I don't know. But it is one of the FedEd's octopus arms. So OECD's new international study on social emotional learning. It's time to bring research and learning together with practice. Building support. RAND is a big one, guys. RAND, that's the one I would write down. One standard does not fit all, creating levels of effectiveness. That's where you're going to have your differentiation that's done through algorithms. ACT, ACT in America. Do I have it on me? I had it ready for the other show I'm doing with Deb, but I have something from ACT. I'll find it in a second. I have so much stuff here. I wish y'all could see how much paper I use. In defense of self-report. So in Chesterfield, 9 to 12, self-reporting. Ask your, and then some divisions, it's middle school. So the teacher's not assessing them. It's the children are self-reporting. Just think about the words there. So ask your kid, are you doing anything called a self-report? Like, ask the questions, because kids don't know. Jobs for the future, for the love of God. Please go into jobs for the future, because it'll take you to the World Economic Forum to understand their part in this. Oh, sorting through if you don't know UVA, we live in the cesspool. That's UVA right there. Transforming Education is literally a company leveraging policy to support a data-informed approach to social emotional learning. Let's see, other big ones. Oh, XSEL Labs. That's a horrific. We'll go over that tomorrow. Behavior, pathologizing. All of our children are mentally ill. RAND. Oh, there's Harvard. That's awesome. New Schools Venture Fund is one of the Bill Gates. That's what they do, is they have venture funds, and then they purchase and they purchase and they purchase. So they look like they're standalone companies, but they're owned by the same venture fund. Pearson. Oh, everybody knows Pearson, right? Yeah. Committee for Children. Rigorous Fun. Has anybody actually done the research? And if I hear rigor one more time, I'm going to flip my lid. Okay, here we go. Building a global ecosystem for the future of learning. The Learning Future and Salzburg Global. I'm not even going to pull it up. But now you're starting to see like the language that we're hearing from our new government and social, how the two, like I've said before, go together, which is why neither political party are talking about it. But I'm just going to mention that. Future ed is a big one too. Oh, there's the YMCA. Because if you didn't know that they were part of the Iron Triangle of education, sorry, they are. Harvard again, and it keeps going. So again, I will. Oh God, I did not even realize how deep Castle SEL is partners. So when you have Castle, it works because Castle says so. Here's how you inspire. That's why it's 14 pages. So you have inspire. Like Peppy Pals. Who would think that would be bad? Sorry, if you have Peppy Pals, they're Castle aligned. And then you've got Institute of Australian Catholic University. And then you've got Assessment in Action. Okay, this is where it gets bad. This is where the data collection comes in. Whole child development. They literally mean your whole child. So again, I just wanted to show that how big this is. Okay. And I will share that. And I'm going to close that so I don't lose my brain. So now let's get to the law behind it. Okay. One, I'm going to pull up, this was the original bill before Nick Freitas dispersed it amongst 4 or 5 delegates. None of them did it right. And we didn't get notification from the legislative. This is how I submitted it to them. So I showed this, not what 4 delegates and 2 senators put into the LAS, but because I showed this, because this is codified. Means it's already in the Constitution of Virginia. It is already codified that they have to do this. This is why we do not want to write a Parent Bill of Rights. Okay? Wrong thing to call it. If you want education transparency, then you call it, we're going to redo this, and we do it together this time, and we get it through. So this is all, so the Transparency in Education Act is what I called it. Everybody twisted it, no, even though it was copyrighted, and they put rights in there, and parents' rights to certain, no. I don't want parental rights attached to anything, because then they're going to use it against us. So this would be textbooks. Okay, when you read that word in Virginia code, it means print and electronic media. And here's the code. Instructional material. And so, guys, this is all. The rights to education transparency are as follows, but not limited to. Fully review and make copies of curricula, books, and other educational materials used by the school. Now, I did twist it into more, but it's based off of, this is the Virginia Code, that you can see your child's curriculum, amongst other things. This is the United States Federal Code. There's a specific way that textbooks, which are print and electronic media, there's a whole section, are brought into a division, which, if you go into the web archive of the VDOE, used to be front and center. School boards so textbooks, meaning they have to do these things to bring textbooks, instructional materials in. At a minimum, they must, appoint evaluation committees by the local school board to review and evaluate textbooks, instructional materials in each subject area. So committees to review and evaluate all instructional materials in all subject areas. You can see where the law got ignored because it's extremely inconvenient considering that we have no books. Doesn't matter. The law is still there. Notice to parents that textbooks under consideration for approval will be listed on the, so textbooks, instructional materials. Has anybody ever been notified? New ed tech coming in, here, look at it. Nope. Not following the law. Made available at designated locations. They don't need those anymore because they don't have books. Okay? So your school board, your school website should have new incoming ed tech software. Look it over. Because there's not books. They don't have to say, hey, go to Swift Creek Elementary School every Saturday to have a look at the new textbooks coming in. Here's the link. Click it. Boop. And see, the thing is that they act like if they acknowledge the law, the house of cards is going to tumble. As I saw with Chesterfield and the opt-outs, the minor percentage. But they know it'll snowball after that. Doesn't matter. The law's still there. Opportunities for those reviewing such textbooks to present their comments and observations. So I was just talking to somebody in Fuck Year yesterday because their SEL committee, who didn't review Second Step, except for one person who reached out, and they said this is great. It looks like it's still bullying. It's bullying. It's character, and you know, what? But so opportunities for those who, so that's those, okay, who have reviewed the instructional materials. Then you have a committee that actually reviews them, but anybody, parent can look at it. And then opportunities for those reviewing, that's all, to present their comments and observations, not just a committee selected by the school board member, who, if you're like Chesterfield, I'm never going to get, nobody with half a sanity is ever going to get on these committees. To present their comments and observations to the local school board through locally approved procedures. This is not new, guys. This is all Virginia law. Procedures to ensure appropriate consideration of citizen comments and observations. At this point in time, do you know how much rewind they would have to do? Because each school has probably 80 or 90 ed tech softwares. So they're just going to keep going until we force them, get the people on the school board to do the work. And I know Gloria is one of those wonderful people that will do the work. It's just too complicated. Get it? You know, even people that want to get the books out, we just don't want to we're just too busy. Okay, so school board, and so that's okay. And then selection criteria, which is this code here, which goes to the Board of Education, and I have written a couple of the board members that I do communicate with, asking them, where are your approved social emotional learning et al. Programs? Because you can find, history and English. State law, this law right here, this Virginia code, I don't know, whoever wants a copy, write me after this, I'll send you a copy of it. So it says that the Board of Education must post approved curriculum, approved textbooks, instructional materials. They must have a list. You don't have to go through the bidding procedure if it's on the approved list. The problem is, if it's not on the approved list, you have to go through bidding. And the problem is, and like I showed in the last show, Loudon has 4 pages of teeny tiny writing of sole source contracts. If you can't prove to me that that's a Virginia Department of Education, then because sole source has to be emergency, or you have to make notification to the public as to why there's no bidding being offered. There's no bidding being offered anywhere. They're all sole source or co-ops, which means they are co-opted with probably a private sector partnership. I found Louisa had one when I spoke last week, an occasional notification of a sole source. Like, that's the one that's going to appease you. In Chesterfield, that means no bidding is being offered, which is, I don't even know, like, fascism, anti-Sherman Act, antitrust, like, so there's no bidding. They're all using the same companies. And if you can't show me that the reasoning behind that is because it's already a Board of Education approved textbook, ed tech software, instructional material, and this is the questions that you need to be asking people. Where is our list on our website of what we have in the schools? Because here's the law. Because these are easy, and I gave like a list of things that ask your, like, why aren't you doing this? Where is this? It's the law. Here's the code. Why? But one voice, as much as we've done Virginia for Children First with one voice, is amplify that by every division having it, even one voice. So John McGuire picked up the portion, which it was funny, the anger, that how parents can hold school boards accountable. That's just ridiculous. It's already law. So I added, because we are constantly omitted, even though we are part of the Constitution's policy development procedure. So this code here is the code for how policy is developed with the community. Okay, and it has like 3 people. It's not the school board. It's not the superintendent. It's certainly not the Student Health Advisory Board, which Chesterfield is trying to promulgate all authority to for wellness. You know how all-encompassing wellness is right now. So I wrote it as, the structure of each division's constitutional republic will be upheld, and that superintendents and school board attorneys are hired by the elected division school board, and authority for policy developed cannot be promulgated to the hired administration superseding the voice of the community. So that was just me rewriting what's already codified, which is how policy is developed. So this is the federal law, 20 USC 12328, which I believe is Protection of People Rights Amendment, or FERPA. When you see, you're going to have one of those whenever you see this. But then here, Virginia Code. Local school boards shall, this is already codified, shall develop a single standardized form to obtain parental consent. This is affirmative parental consent, not in loco parentis, for the release of student data. So if we're talking about data, then it's FERPA. Or it could be COPA. No, I'm pretty sure it's FERPA. If developed by the local school board, such form shall be used in the community-based management team, health, because health, social services, juvenile, behavioral, they've all been it's all one big system now. It's not the Department of Ed, it's not the Department of Ed. Department of Behavioral Health, the VDH, the social services, juvenile justice, it's all one big, like the Department of Labor, the Department of Agriculture, the Department of Education, which is actually the Department of Workforce and Education, if you look it up. That's where the data is going. It's not just going to Fed Ed. No, because labor, figure it out. Agriculture is the drive for the free lunch. So now agriculture has all your children's data. It's not just one department. So now they've done that in Virginia. And then it says, note, see Fairfax County. Okay. Which is, I'll get back to that, because this is one concise document that says everything that I'm going to tell you that Fairfax gives. They give a K through 8 example and a 9 through 12, which is odd when I heard that Fairfax teacher, it was a rumor, I don't even know if it's true, but and it's odd that Loudon, being dumpster fire just like Fairfax, is still telling people they can't opt out. So I give this came straight from Loudon County, or Fairfax. Okay, this is what's really important. No student shall be required to participate in any counseling program to which the student's parent object. I'll copy that code right there. Boop. This, and this is where the council, because when you go into the Senate, you are going to have lobby groups. That is the counselors, that is the psychologists, that is the VEA, that is the VSBA, that is the Librarian Association, that is the Social Work Association, that is the Association of Elementary School Principals, that is the Association of Secondary Principals. It is never ending. It is not just the VEA or the VSBA, promise you. But the Counselors Association actually made me laugh. Can you imagine me in a little tiny room with Ghazala Hashmi and the VSBA and the VEA? Lord have mercy, bless my soul. So when it got to this part of reading the legislation, the Counselors Association literally said, so what, are we supposed to notify parents every time that we, and I said, yes you are, by law. Because they were reading it as I was writing a new law. No, it's already law, point blank, right there, whoop. And I didn't even mix words here. That is exactly how it reads in the Code of Virginia. I added this. This was an addition. Because notification of guest lecturers. So it goes along with the field trip. Same logic. You take a child out of the building somewhere else. You have to get what? A permission slip. So this is what we're really going to work on. So guest lecturers, assemblies, and outside presenters with clear opt-out provisions 30 days prior. But the problem is that we got the fact of how the legislation was written 12 hours before I had to be down in Richmond. And they had literally just copied the code and not rewritten it to recodify it the way I had written it. So it read like all student activities had to have a 30-day. And so, of course, because what are we supposed to notify them every time they do this, every time they have, like, whatever. No. Guest lectures, guest assemblies, actually any assemblies, because they have SEL wrap assemblies, outside presenters, because that would keep out drag queen story hour. So that's the code. So that is not the writing, but that's the code that I used for the same logic. Big thing here, guys. We've been hearing a lot of, especially here in Chesterfield, that you can't get your child's education record. FERPA now Obama may have done a lot of things to FERPA, but the one thing that they cannot deny you, and I encourage everybody, I don't care how old you are, to contact your school and get your education record. It's not just days missed and grades, especially if you were born or if you graduated in the last 20 years. Because the reason they're pushing back is because they don't want you to see what's in your education record. That's FERPA. They have 45 days to get it to you. And if you were paying attention, and I don't know if I have a copy up here with me or not, but Anita Hogue, Womb to Tomb, that she wrote, I don't know, 10, 15, 20 years ago. Womb to Tomb, it's written that for a reason, because in the day, there were people way smarter who knew all this stuff way before I did, way before we did. So just think about that. Like, you think I'm crazy? Imagine how they were perceived 20 years ago. Telling us, this is coming. This is coming. And imagine poor Anita Hogue sitting up in Pennsylvania right now. Or, Lynn sitting in North Carolina being like, told y'all. Told you. Told you. It's kind of like, I've only been at this a year and a half, and it's how I feel sometimes. When parents write me enraged about certain stuff, and I'm like, told you. And then so this would be the rights of parents to do what? Direct the education. I was tired of hearing about people locking their children out of buildings. Literally can't get in your elementary school. I would never send my child back, but that's me. So I added in, if I had to rewrite it now, I would add IDEA and ESSA, because both of those have strict codes for parent participation. So visit the child during school hours. Parents have a fundamental right to direct and be involved in their child's upbringing and education. And that was just to throw something in there. You can't lock a parent out of their building. And the fact that I had to codify that. And then this is where it gets really important. Virginia Code 22.1/792. no questionnaire or survey requesting that students provides sexual information shall be administered to any kindergartner grade through 6. Okay. People laughed at me. They wanted to change it K through 12, which I knew would never happen. But that's the one thing the legislative writers changed, which is not even what I want to change. But providing sexual information is what we have to pay attention to. What is, like, sexual information? That's like everything. When you talk about these lessons and how gender is brought into it, and, you know, queer theory and all that stuff that's part of the SEL machine, identity, whose identity? Respecting the rights of others, but not all. Okay? Sexual information has never been recodified. So that would be anything having to do with sex. Sex act or your sex. Because I can tell you that my child in 6th grade had to provide binary male, female. So, right there. And before I jump into PPRA, which is right here, which is the big one. So this would be a whole bunch of Virginia codes. Each school board must have a clear and transparent policy and procedure for the selection and evaluation. Same thing as, but this is codified, must have a clear and transparent policy. Ask your school board, where is our clear and transparent policy for the selection and evaluation of instructional materials? But then it goes on to say that a copy of all of these policies must be in a manual available at each school. Well, that was before technology. Still applies today. And then it goes on to talk about, and I added current instructional material review. Copyright clauses in contracting with educational is a violation. Okay, because that's what they'll do, is they'll tell you, and it's written into, I have Chesterfield's contracts with all these companies. They'll say they can't give you the curriculum because it's a copyright infringement. And if they tell you that, you tell them, I'm not going to sell it, I want to see it. And then what they're going to do is they're going to try to scope and sequence you. Scope and sequence you means they're going to send you, like I have, let's see if I can pull it up. Like I have from Chesterfield, this is what scope and sequence looks like. They're going to send you a screenshot of second step that is 8 pages of videos. You don't see the video. You just see the screenshot of the video. That's called, they're going to scope and sequence you. You're going to say no. I want to come in. And so that's how I got Chesterfield. I forced them, let's see. I forced them to, let me do a second step. Add into, they actually had to change the student code of conduct, the big manual, and the curriculum. And down in teeny tiny letter, if you read it, it says you have to make an appointment with your school counselor to go in to review your child's curriculum. You can sit there all damn day and go through every single piece and watch every single thing. Had I not pulled my child and now my kindergartner out of it, I can't. You don't think that I would have sat there for days watching every video. But let me pull up second step real quick. Because I made a second step file for, I don't remember who, and it is shareable, so I will post that in here. So let's see what second step scope and sequence looks like. Wow, there's a lot in here. How about if you use second step, because I've got unit handouts from, okay, so this is what scope and sequence looks like. This is what they'll do. These are all videos they're showing your kid. Video, video, video. Wrap up, video, 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 video. This is what it'll look like. What in the world do you think I'm going to gain from that? Nothing. So you say, no, thank you. You're not going to scope and sequence me. If they do that, that's just unit 1. And then we could go to, this is 6th grade. Unit 2. Video, video, video that they're showing your kid. If you know what's going on. Okay? So that's what scope and sequence is. And then you get the handouts, which, you know, they don't look so bad, you know. Read each situation, describe what changed. You know, Dara started in middle school. She wanted to be cool. Who was affected? How are they affected? And so you read this and you're like, well, what's the big deal? The big deal is that you have no idea what the conversations in this lesson are like. Because what you read versus the reality of what's going on is not. So then here, like, I've intentionally or mistakenly done something that caused harm. Okay? Does something that made someone upset, done something that made... Guys, this is why you have to watch Deb tomorrow, is because this is where, and when I say that all of our children are mentally ill, I mean it. These questions are doing something very bad. Very, very bad. And the reason I went to Deb with it is because she has a huge national following, and this is the kind of thing that I need to get out ASAP, not in a Substack. I mean, I've reached, you know, that's why it's going to be on Deb's channel instead of doing it here, is because, one, she's an ed pro, and she's been doing this, and she used to be a teacher, but is that's why it'll be on her. And again, it's the reason we learn on YouTube. So is that you can't look at things and be like, well, that's just about bullying. Well, how is it even, okay, even if it was, like I said, the Virginia Code and the CDC codified bullying to have a power imbalance. So that in itself, or perceived power imbalance. So that in itself will tell you bullying is not about bullying. It's about protected classes. But that was on the last show. I'm not going to go back there. I'm going to go back to the law. And then, so this is what I was talking about for school board members. Okay. Oh, no, I'm sorry. This would be the Virginia Consumer Data Protection Act. Opt-in, which is under effect, currently in effect now, which requires opt-in for all children under the age of 13 for data collection. Not opt-out, opt-in. Look up Virginia Consumer Data Protection Act and see how many companies that provide ed tech have been preparing for this to happen since Northern was in office and this legislation was first introduced under Dunnicant. And why is it in effect and nobody's doing anything about it? It affects all of us, but especially it is an opt-in for children under 13, not opt-out. So I know that earlier we talked about the power of opting out, but it's different in this case. Because opting in would mean you have to know about it to then decide if you want to opt in, not hope you know about it in a piece that you might opt out of something. Okay, so that's the Virginia Consumer Data Protection Act. And then, so this would be the concerning school guidance and counseling programs. This is Virginia, Chapter 7. Because if you haven't read, not the Code of Virginia, the Virginia Constitution, the Bill of Rights for Virginia, VIII is education. But the counselors have their own section. Already on books, a provision for written notification at least annually, okay, Don't forget that one of the first ones I put up here was the one, no student shall be required to participate in any counseling in which the student's parents may object. Already law. So then I emphasize that one. That's career counseling. That's social emotional learning. That's every division has, like, I was in Louisa. They have a button for PK autism kids. Want to see your counselor? Click here. You're not following the law. You can't do that. It's that simple. And we will never return to logic. We don't need any more law. We need to recognize what we have. The sexually explicit materials that people are fighting all over the nation, if you followed the all instructional materials that's been around forever, because all they did was complicate it with that. I was with Craig DeSessa last week talking about the opt-in. He said, so why did Obashane write a law a couple years ago that we couldn't get through? Don't know. You can answer that for yourself. Already codified. But this is the continuation of that same code right here. The full thing. A provision for written notification. Please post the questions. What did I just show you? Was it part of the... See, I don't know who I'm talking to because it just says Facebook user. So tell me who I'm talking to. I'm looking through trying to think what I just... Oh, I think it was... Oh, I know where it was. Hold on. Questions. I think it's going to be... Sorry. I try to help everybody as much as possible. But I gotta find... Hey, Roxanne. What questions, babe? Let's see. Let me pull up my second step. Is that what it was? Oh, you're talking about the lesson plans. Okay. So, Roxanne, write me because I put a file. Actually, I can do it in my phone. Seeing myself talk live on my phone is weird. I don't ever use my computers up here except to do this. I do everything on my phone. So, I actually made a Google Drive for second step, and it's not complete. And I made it available public, and I'm going to post it in the group. Let's see. Second step. So, since it's in my phone, I can't put it in the comments here, but I can put it in the group. And I'm going to do that right now. How interactive is that? So this would be second, and I'm putting it in right now. So this is going to have a lot of second step. And it's a whole lot. It also goes into how second step is, doing kindergarten sex ed, comprehensive sex ed, like talking about touching in kindergarten. So, but I can't get back into comprehensive sex ed. So, so back to the law. So this is already codified under 8. I'm going to post this here. This is a very important one. Copy this code. Very important. And probably if you're in the group, I've shared the PDF version of this entire code. So it's very important. So you're a written notification at least annually. Some divisions, people don't think they have it. They'll find it buried in your student conduct, your parent manual. Don't sign that thing ever. Unless you've read it word to word. You've called me to dissect if you don't understand what something means. Because giving them video, yearbook, photo permission, not about that. You've given them access to 800 things you don't understand. So it could be buried, and they're saying, whoop, we gave you notification. That's our transparency. Because under federal law, they have best practices, and then they have, but you can also do this. to parents about the academic and career guidance and personal social counseling programs which are available to their children. So at least annually, your school has to notify you of the academic counseling or academic guidance, career guidance, and personal social counseling programs which are available to their children. They are so many. This is not just one thing that a guidance counselor, because they're not guidance counselors anymore, they're school counselors. That's where this got complicated, is that now they are out of the guidance office 80% of the time. They are in their office 20% of the time. Which means kids who actually need help with guidance, like their schedule, they're not available. So the schools can't, like literally can't, because they're going to tell you so much if they were to actually tell you. Or if they notify you, they'll just say, like we did before, if you're lucky, that you can opt them out. And that's what I would put. I would not even ask unless you're like me and you want to know what's in your division. But I would opt them out. And we had it in the group, in the files, is the mental health pre-opt them out. It has like, you cannot talk to my child, counsel my child, and it's all based on law. There's opt-outs in the group that go on for days. I'm talking about, if those of you that are on YouTube that may not be familiar, and Facebook, because anybody that wants to help, we're like a two-man show, and we have a website, and we have like a lot of resources, including the SEL opt-out. But anybody that wants to donate time or money to help us keep that thing up to date, we would love that. But the notification shall include the purpose and general description of the program, information regarding ways parents may review materials to be used in guidance and counseling programs at their child's school, and information about the procedures by which parents may limit their child's participation in such programs. Already law. And so I added, this includes everything under VTSS, Tier 1 Universal Mental Health Support System, including PBIS, restorative services, and social emotional learning. That was me. Just to like wrap up everything that they must notify you of. A provision prohibiting the use of counseling techniques, already law, which are beyond the scope of professional certification of training of counselors. This would be yoga, meditation, all that stuff under anxiety that I've showed y'all before that they had to do. Hypnosis, other psychotherapeutic techniques, mindful breathing. Guys, these are all things that teachers, not just social emotional learning, guys, the guidance counselors, school counselors, they're not even qualified to give group counseling. They are only qualified to do small group, which is like 3 to 5 children or individual. They're not even licensed. So if they're not even licensed, why in the world would we be allowing teachers who are now paraprofessionals and instructional aides, if you're lucky, that we've dropped the standards on to be doing this to our children? Oh, but it's not debatable because there's law. A provision requiring that information and records of personal social counseling be confidential and separate from students' educational records. That used to be reality when they were paper file cabinets, separate from their education record. Now, because we are 100% technology, they don't want to acknowledge that because they can't separate the data. They can't. If it's embedded systemic social emotional learning, how in the world are you going to keep them separate? It's not possible. Until we challenge the root problem of the entire education system, we are playing whack-a-rhino, whack-a-mole, and we will never get anywhere until we acknowledge the law on the books. A provision with respect to personal social counseling setting forth either the procedures by which a parent can elect in writing to have their parent opt out, or the option this is it. At the option of this local school board, if the local school board determines that affirmative parental consent is required. Okay. At the option of the local school board, if the school board determines that affirmative parental consent is required to participate in such counseling. So there's your local control. Hold on. Remind me after, sweetheart. I'm in the middle of this. Okay. And I will post it for. Oh, here we go. I am posting it in the group now. I don't know if it did or not, but it's a Google file. And it is. I can see it right there. I just second step Google Drive. Okay. Anything else, keep a running list, and I will post whatever you guys want. So, opt-in procedures. So, school boards, you still have local control on all this. You just have to. Now, Chesterfield, Loudoun, Virginia Beach, we, I believe, are beyond. But the little ones, you guys that are not so big, you can retain your autonomy. And I will be happy to walk you through it, as I have 3 divisions currently removing SEL. Removing all of it. And going back to what's in the Virginia Constitution. In issuing such policy, the local school board may distinguish between group and individual or small group counseling as defined in subdivision A3 of this section. In no event shall a local school board require affirmative parental consent for short duration personal. So, okay, this is where we get into affirmative versus in loco parentis. In no event shall local school board require affirmative parental consent. So think about it backwards. For short duration personal social counseling. We know this is not short duration personal. It's not short duration. It's embedded systemically in every class. Okay? It's not short or personal. Okay? But then it says, in no event shall a school board require affirmative parental consent. But then also it's codified that a parent may opt their child out of all of it. That's the thing. You have to know what's going on, and you 100% can opt them out, but you have to know about it. But they have to, right here, if you read it backwards, they have to give affirmative parental consent for everything that's not short duration personal and social counseling. That's in loco parentis is then removed, because none of this is short personal or social counseling. See where I'm going? You have to read it backwards. Speak legalese and legislationese is, but I can read it now. So this was meant to make sure that if it was low, one time only, because the child needed something, because say in an alternate, like back in reality, that it was a parent's fault and they're mandated reporters anyway. That would be this circumstance. You don't have to have affirmative parental consent if a child comes to you because they're abused. That's where this is back when we had common sense. When school counselors were sitting in their office waiting for kids to come talk to them. That would be guess what? Because you change the system doesn't change the law. So now it's come back, they flip backwards on them. None of this is short duration, which means that affirmative parental consent is required. In loco parentis, be damned. And then I added, all VTSS services are not short-term, so affirmative parental consent is required, not in loco parentis. And I had even forgotten I wrote that when I was just telling you that. Just FYI. And then there's other stuff. School, community, communications, community involved. I don't know if you live in a division where your superintendent won't respond to you. I do. Merv. But local school boards shall develop and implement policies to prohibit the administration of questionnaires or surveys to public school students during the regular school day or at school-sponsored events without informed parental consent for the student's participation, when participation in such questionnaire or survey may subsequently result in the sale for commercial purposes of personal information regarding the individual student. They'll say, we're not selling it. I would show them the PBS video where the watchdogs came in and did the evaluation. 96% of our children's data, thank you, Amanda Kozak and Powhatan, 96% of the web apps are monetizing, selling our children's data. That would be my comeback to that. It's not the burden of proof when you involve this much ed tech does not fall on the parents to prove they're not selling it. Okay? It's like a division called me one time and said, I need you to help me prove PBS doesn't work. Like, no, the burden of proof is on the school divisions that it does work. Okay? See, we've gotten flipped backwards. I don't have to prove to you why what you're educating my child is wrong. You have to prove to me, when we're 50th in the nation, that what you're doing does work. And we are so far beyond that logic. PBIS has been here since 2009, Meadowbrook High School. Still the worst performing school with the worst behavior. Wouldn't logic tell you PBS doesn't work and we should do something else? If PBS was actually meant to do what it said it was doing, which it's not. That's just logic. That's FERPA and Virginia Code. I don't know why I threw in school board constitutes a body corporate, but I did. Threat assessment, guys. If you didn't know this, Virginia was the first state to require school boards to develop threat assessment teams. I'm going to jump off the big screen because I have to get really with this. Threat assessment teams, okay? So if your division has recently passed a policy that your child's data is now getting swapped with the police department, that happened a couple months ago, all across the state. That's for safety. No, it's not. So threat assessment teams first in the nation to mandate it to school boards. So it started out as a team, and then when we went to technology, it turned to what? Software. Gaggle, GoGuardian, Securely, Bark are the main ones. So what that means is that now most of this information can come from Mackey and Elizabeth Warren, because it does, if you're in gender dysphoria, or is that you're going to look up different stuff trying to figure out what's going on. And it does target certain sections of, I don't even know words to use anymore that don't make me want to vomit. So you can find a lot of information from liberals who hate this. So if, say, your child looks up a bad word, it's going to flag somebody they're paying $10 an hour to sit at home. You can look up Gaggle, especially. Look up Gaggle review. The people that have worked for these companies will tell you how the process works. So your child's full information will pop up to whoever they're paying $10 an hour to look at what your child just searched. And then they have a timer. It's like a clicker to find out if this child is an actual threat or not. And then you can read the reviews. They lose their job. And these are people they're paying $10 an hour. This is where FERPA and Obama came in. School officials are third-party vendors, contractors, everybody that they employ. So they say only school officials have access to your child's data. If you know to ask that question, say, well, what are school officials? We would think, until you bet me, that would mean teachers, principals, school board. No. Bill Gates, Chan Zuckerberg, Emerson Collective, who is Steve Jobs' widow, on and on and on. Planned Parenthood, everybody they have access to your child's data. And guys, just to squash, you can read FERPA, I'll pull it up another time, but they'll tell you that it's all aggregated. which means it's only done by, color, like blacks, whites, non-Hispanic, white, whatever. That is 100% a lie. You can read in FERPA. The goal is to have disaggregation. They will tell you that your child's personal ID, your student ID, is a personal identifier. So they'll tell you, well, it's all aggregated. So it's only sent out in the statewide longitudinal database system as like subgroups. So white kids are doing this, black kids are doing this. No, it's not. FERPA, I have it broken down. I've read the whole 800-page document. No, it's not. It says right here. Their commitments are to disaggregation. That's where Amy Gadara and the statewide longitudinal database system and data quality campaign come in again. So just right there, I had to jump in because a lot of people don't even know about Virginia and threat assessment teams. This is really important too because character education came before social emotional learning. Divisions like Louisa, they're hiding SEL under the term character education. No. So all moral and character education, this is already, okay, so this would be US code. So this was before social emotional learning when Bush rewrote the Protection of Pupil Rights Amendment, PPRA. Learn it, love it. I'm going to revisit it in a second. So the big part is up where I skipped. All moral and character education done in each division with educational technology and full disclosure of Protection of Pupil Rights Amendment. And if you go on our website under Know Your Rights, Protection of Pupil Rights Amendment is, and if you go back up here, this is the Protection of Pupil Rights Amendment. It is cited in the Virginia Code regarding questionnaires. Okay, in any case in which a questionnaire or survey is anything that collects data, including assignments and curriculum, I added that, requesting that students provide sexual information, this is Virginia Code, mental health information, that's everything going on is mental health, social emotional learning, all of it is mental health. They will tell you in the triangle, universal mental health, tier 1. Medical information, okay, medical, wellness, what medical, question that. Medical and health, they all go interchange now. Information on student health risk behaviors. All of this stuff is about behaviors and especially risk. The school board shall notify the parent concerning the administration of questionnaire or survey in writing not less than 30 days prior. Virginia Code plus PPRA right here. So let me give you a rundown on what PPRA says. PPRA is 8 things they cannot survey your child about without 30 days prior. So this is where Virginia and federal law immerse. Why is that so hard for them? Because of the definition of a survey. Anything that collects data, survey and assessment. An assessment can be a survey. I've already gone down this rabbit hole. But for education, a survey used to mean they would only do this twice a year because they had books. But the definition of a survey being anything that collects data means they can't follow the law because how are they going to notify you 30 days ahead of time on surveys? So we're talking about political affiliations or beliefs of my child. That would be that civic assignment from 8th grade here, all about politics. Do you like Republicans? Do you like Democrats? Okay, perfect example. That's a survey. It's collecting data. Mental or psychological problems of my child or his or her family. Mental or psychological problems of myself or my family. SEL is nothing but a continuous assessment and reformation of your child. And Deb and I will go over exactly why this is so bad tomorrow. How are they going to notify you about this 30 days prior when it's embedded in systemic? But I'm not just going to tell you how impossible it is to be this. I'm going to tell you how I did. Sexual behaviors and attitudes. That would be asking my child if they're not binary. That would be talking about is transgender good for the community, like that 8th grade civics lessons. These are just the couple that we know about, guys. So you think about what we know about, and then we always know that what you know about, multiply it by 100 by what you don't know about. Illegal, antisocial, self-incriminating, or demeaning behavior. So we'll think about the assignment that was given to the test on the giver. And I talked to a parent in Fuck Year where her 6th grader had to read The Outsiders, same exact questions as the predecessor to the actual book question. Is it okay to break the law for common good? Is it okay to tell white lies? Okay. This under federal law, they cannot ask your child because it is illegal, antisocial, self-incriminating, or demeaning behavior. Critical appraisals of other individuals with whom respondents have close family relationships. This is going to be, do you have a supportive parent at home? Guys, I can pull up and show you how they're doing assignments with your kids, developing plans, who their supportive parents, supportive people, supportive adults, other than you are. If they don't have now been taught that you're not safe, they have plans they're developing with your children as to who their supportive adults are. They can't do that. Nope. Religious practices, affiliations, or beliefs of my child remain. Income. So there's some basic ones. So that's PPRA. Federal law. Now, let me tell you how this worked out. I'm trying to get down here. I'm in the wrong map. So let me tell you how this worked out for me. And I'm going to close at this. Let's see where we're at. Okay, because I can get my kids. And then we will pick back up. What do I have left? This thing is long. They say, we can't write law like that because it's just too much. So you write crappy law and you hand it off to the VDOE? No, that's going to stop now. Law is supposed to be complicated. It's not supposed to not have teeth. And this isn't a law anyway. It's just a bill to recognize education transparency. It's not a law. We don't need any more law. Promise you that. So what do I have left? Oh, I think I only have one thing left. There's one thing about sex offender database, which is important too. But right here, and this is for Doris if you're watching, or for my Virginians for Safe Tech or all those people. There's so HB 817 in 2020 was, if you're on the school board, you need to look that up because they handed and I have it, but I'm not going to pull it up, to develop technology safety best practices. Use of digital devices. This is an actual manual that you can look up in the VDOE, but the school board shall is how the law was written. The Department Board of Education wrote it as may. That's why and this includes things like brain breaks, blink breaks every 30 minutes. Like primary, my cat is under my feet. Primary, max 2 hours on a computer a day. Secondary, max 3 hours a day. So now you see why they don't want to acknowledge it. But guess what? A liberal wrote it. I even wrote that liberal a message asking, why aren't you enforcing your own law? Because the law said shall, the VDOE. This is why we don't assign things to the department. So that's it. What's this one? Oh, this is the agreement. So this is the one that John McGuire took. That everybody was like, oh my God, you're going to write a law that says that Parents can go to the circuit court if they're aggrieved by their school board. You morons. It's already a law. So look up VA 22.1-7. Is that if you're aggrieved, you have 30 days. I watched the left uses it against the people trying to do the right. In Orange County, the left went. People say, well, what is it going to do? I don't know. I don't know. But so where do we go? You go to a school meeting, you tell them something really screwed up, they don't do anything. Okay? You're aggrieved. Go to the circuit court and file charges against them. I don't know what it's going to do. Okay? You're told that the PPRA doesn't exist, you can't opt your child out. Go to our website. That's called an OCR violation. I'm going to shoot my cat. AG has an OCR violation. Federal has an OCR violation. For PPRA, separate. FERPA, if they lie to you about that, file. It does take time to fill out the paperwork. But if we all started to do something, what do you think it would snowball into? If every parent who has ever been lied to goes on tomorrow and goes to our website, Know Your Rights, there's a link for the AG OCR complaint and for the federal, for both PPRA and FERPA. Can you imagine if they got flooded with even 300 tomorrow for every parent who has been told they cannot opt their child out? That's how you start to do something when you feel powerless. But then I'm going to close with how I forced them. I called my daughter's principal and I brought up PPRA, which he didn't even know that there was law on the books for Virginia. He knew a little bit about the federal law, but how it would actually be applied in school. So here's how it went down, the email in short. You will not sneeze at, look at sideways, think about, talk to, breathe on, assess, curricula, anything to my child on these areas. Nada. Don't look at them twice about it. Don't give them an assignment. PPRA also says if you do this, they have to give you, parents will say, well, will they get dinged? No. They have to give you an alternative assignment first. They won't because none of this stuff is actually mattering for anything. So I would open up my daughter's Canvas and I would see zeros, but that weren't actual zeros, so that I would know that those were assignments not given to my child. But it was literally because I told her, the principal, he said, okay, we won't do this. Then I pulled up an assignment which she was accidentally given asking if she was non-binary, male or female. Lost my lid. And so then it got to the point of, follow me. Do you comprehend the words coming out of my mouth? Do not talk to my child. Look at what I just said prior. These 8 things. Sent it to all of her teachers, who then had to respond back to me that they understood the words coming out of my mouth. This was before I even knew the gravity of it. I just respect the law. I understand the law. I understand why not acknowledging the law is very bad. And I understand what happens to a nation when all of this law, especially the fate of the nation for our children, when you don't fight back on law and when you don't acknowledge it, like AOC, I think it's somewhere in here. Law only works if people acknowledge it and enforce it. So I gotta go because there's a Chesterfield County School Board meeting tonight. It's gonna be good stuff. You might be able to, if you're going, 202 might be the cutoff. But we've got a squad tonight. And no, it's not about book banning. We're just teaming up because we're tired of fighting this. There's a whole lot of stuff going on besides book banning that needs to be talked about. Budgets, special ed kids. It's not always about book banning, guys. I don't know. How about that Cosby? These books are banned. Book banning. Here's a free QR code, Cosby High School. That's called grooming. And it violates probably some other digital child protection law on the internet. This is obscenity, guys, and I'm not going to get into the code of... Guys, we don't have any of the exemptions that allow this stuff. 30 states have stuff that allow obscene materials in schools. Ours are only... Look up the virginity... wish. The Virginia obscenity exemptions. All 3 of higher ed. Not or higher ed. It'll say public, library, museum of higher ed. Okay. Those commas, I love Bobby, but yesterday I was like, Bobby, read it like this. Public, okay, so library of higher education. Museum of higher education. Institute of higher education. So everything that comes before the of higher education applies to. It's not or higher education. So if you look at that, people say, what does that mean? That means it's all illegal in schools, period. We're fighting it wrong. So on that note, I'm going to get my kids. Stay tuned. I'll post the link to watch the Swaggit for tonight. I don't even know what I'm talking about yet, but I will probably get triggered. And it's going to be good tonight. So we're going to talk about a lot of things. Stay tuned for that. Tomorrow night, 8 o'clock, I will continue with this series. Now that you know the law, hopefully in the next 2 days, some of you will attempt to use it, figure it out, do something with it, and we can revisit what's happened since then. So, and then as we're going to get more into the why, the how long that this has been, the people that are dead and buried and mummified by now who started this, and the plan behind it. And then we're finally going to get to the inconvenient truth about why neither political party is talking about it. And that's why I'm angry all the time. So when people have Amy Gadara as their what's that? I am sure you will be triggered. I am triggered all the time. And people, this is what I said the other day. People call me unhinged because of the way I speak to the Board of Education and to my school board. I would counter that with, if you're a parent who's hinged, I feel sorry for your children. Because if this stuff's going on and you're not doing anything about it, and I'm unhinged because I go to a school board, you're hinged is fine. I know I am, and God bless me. You can call me unhinged. It's passion. People are like, you're angry all the time. It's passion. Sometimes it's rage, but passion. You'll see the rage in my face. Okay, you know when the rage comes out. Okay, speaking emphatically at a school board, a Republican school board, and one running for delegate. Vote smarter, not harder. At the people who have failed your child after admitting they did so on legal advice, and they've never read or even looked at the curriculum that's given to your kids, and then you give them the law that says they have to do this and they still ignore you, whether it's the state level or my local school board, yes, you have earned this. And so when people call me unhinged, God's righteousness, I don't know. I was built like this my whole life. I just never had the right direction, and I just finally think God put me on the right path to use all of this and all this. I don't have a problem speaking truth. I don't care who you are, what color you are. The truth is the truth. Okay? Especially when you know and you research and you've read and you finally understand as much as I do. And that crosses both political aisles. But is that if we've come to a place where you don't want to be lumped in as, I'm proud to be that mom, and everybody should. These are your children. This is the future of the world. These are your children. So when we talk about, if you start actually believing, well, maybe transgender children, they're children. They're minors. Period. Return to logic. It's that easy. They're children. They're minors. You don't know what's happening. It's grooming. Period. So you have to get like based. James Lindsay talks a lot about being based. Like, I'm based AF. Like, I am so firm in what I know and my beliefs and my facts. You can't ever, I dare somebody to, they've tried. You can't shut truth and knowledge, facts down. But you have to care enough to want to learn. This is what I do and share it with you. And I'm unhinged. I would again challenge parents who want to be hinged, who value their status in the community, go back to what we talked about in the beginning. The 1 out of 7 who said hell no to the vaccine. You know what we stopped? Hell on earth. By being the bad people who were going to infect the world because it didn't make sense to us. But I would say that it's like the parents who got vaccinated because they didn't want to be called out, or they vaccinated their kids because they didn't want to be judged. Well, you can thank us, those of us that said from the beginning, because we stopped vaccine passports. The 1 out of 7 that did not, because they could not force, with that many of us saying hell no, is that if parents did that, imagine what the power of the opt-out. Look it up, New Discourses, James Lindsay. It's 17 minutes. The power of the opt-out. It's great. It's on YouTube or Apple iPod. It's not one of his 4 hours. Do that. And then listen to the one, When to Stand Up, which is G. Van Fleet. You can stand up and now, or you can pray to live through it and maybe then stand up or speak up. 2 very short ones, very important. On that note, gotta get